Sure.
Hello. First, hello. Thank you very much for being with us today, Nadina, Melissa, two of our MVP heroes out there. We came together. The main reason is I think I want to learn from you. I want to hear your story. I mean, I see you out there, and many of us think, how can I go about it? Like, why did you become MVP? How did you become MVP? How did you become a community hero? Maybe short introduction to the people who don't know you yet.
Melissa, I'll let you go first.
Oh, sure. Okay. I'm Melissa Dees. I'm a founding partner with Hands on Connect Cloud Solutions. We have an app exchange app for managing volunteers. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem. So I've been using Salesforce for about a little over 10 years now, but really heavily involved in the ecosystem in the last 5 years. And working mostly with nonprofits and higher ed and a few corporate customers. And that's pretty much who I am as far as the Salesforce world goes.
And I'm Nadina Lisbon. I'm based out of Austin, Texas. I work for Tradeshift. I'm also a platform champion, a RAD coach, and one of the Austin developer user group leaders. I've been in Salesforce for about, I think, 7 to 8 years. I live, breathe Salesforce. I started at a startup, and I pretty much have been heavily involved in a lot of community, I would say, for the last 5 years as well.
And that's a great point, Nadina, that I should have said, I guess, that I do lead a nonprofit user group. And that got started actually with the COVID, with the pandemic, because I live in a small area in North Alabama where there are no user groups. So unlike Austin, who has every user group possible, right? There were none in Alabama, not in my part of Alabama, not within an hour and a half drive of me. And so that was one of the reasons that I got involved in so many of the Dreamin' events, because I didn't have that local in-person community. And at the time, you had to have an in-person community group meeting once a quarter. And I talked to Jessica Langston actually when I was in Amsterdam for Your Dreamin' a couple of years ago about changing that for all those people that were not in those hubs and centers of Salesforce like Austin and Indianapolis and New York, the big cities. So been involved in that. I'm a co-founder of nonprofit Dreamin', and that inaugural event happened in January this year. Also a co-founder of Food Force, which was just a fun little thing that we did because we were bored during the pandemic.
Hey, okay, we have to talk more about Food Force. I never heard about it. It sounds delicious. What about cake? Is there cake?
Well, and so funny you should say that, Johan, because Christy Fedora, if you know her, submits things for Food Force all the time. And she's like, we need to have a bake-off. And I'm like, you're right, that would be so fantastic. So I'm like, how do we do that virtually? How do you do a bake-off if you can't taste or smell or eat the whatever's been baked? So we're open to suggestions and ideas, because a lot of people I think are interested in doing that, and it would be a great fun. And it really has nothing to do with Salesforce, except for the fact that it was a lot of Salesforce practitioners that we were all cooking and sharing what we were cooking during the pandemic because we couldn't eat at restaurants, right? And so Food Force, Sarah Orens and Mike DeMaria actually did the little app for me, and I put it on one of our beta llama sites and spun it up. So food4ce.org is the URL, and it was fun. So it was something fun to do. Another way that we connect, right, in the community that is not specific to Salesforce. It just happens that we are all in Salesforce and work in Salesforce, and we like to cook. And like Knit Force, Nadina and I are in a group that meets on Sunday afternoon and knits and crochets and crafts together. So
yeah, and
there are a lot of affinity groups out there beyond just, where it's either diversity or, cloud specific, or, because we are whole people, right? We all have other interests as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm part of a group. We meet on Saturday. We just happen to be Salesforce professionals, but sometimes we meditate, sometimes we just chat, sometimes we just catch up on the week. We knit, we crochet. We talk about baking. One time we did one of the virtual Airbnbs together. So we did pasta. So that was a big hit.
How did you get started? You are so active in the community, and how did it start out for you? I mean, you didn't start as leader of 5 different groups, 7 days a week.
Yeah, so for me, when I first started, I remember I was working at my startup at the time, and Cindy Reeder, who is the Austin admin user group leader, she talked a lot about, getting started with a community. And at the time, Sumas is who was running the developer group. So I went to a couple of those meetings and, just fell in love. It was so good to, one, I didn't know this whole community had existed. This was before Trailhead. So Trailhead was not a thing when I started. So a lot of learning was trial by fire, where you knew pretty advanced people and hope for them to share their wisdom with you, but then also you just had to kind of hit the grindstone and just try. And I always tell people I break everything in Salesforce so that I can put it back together. So yeah, I went to that user group, and then I've gone to a few others. So another big one was a virtual women in tech group that Jessica Murphy runs and Rachel Watson runs. And that group was very instrumental to me because I'm super introverted and I hate driving. But that group was virtual. And so I literally could just tune in my pajamas and listen to all the great content they had. So that was super good. As my career progressed, Trailhead came along. I remember going to my first Dreamforce and just being overwhelmed. One, with excitement because you cannot do everything, but two, all the connections I made my first year. It was just massive and explosive, and it just led to meeting all these different people, just communicating and just really starting to build that community, build that network, participating more in the Trailblazer community. I didn't really know much about it when I first started. I mean, you get on and you create your profile, but there's so many groups. You kind of get overwhelmed the first time, where it's like suggested groups to add. So I added all of them. Definitely not good first time around. Maybe pick a location or start with something close to you so that you can have people talk you through. But now I will say I'm still a part of a bunch of those groups because I don't have as much information. So I might have some of them as like weekly and some of them as daily, but definitely there's so much happening from like a Trailblazer community that if you're not on it, you're missing out. And yeah, that kind of just spiraled my career from that first Dreamforce to then running the developer user group, also becoming a platform champion. That was very instrumental because there are things that I just would not do. I've been featured in so many videos and people are like, you have such high energy. And I'm like, I'm very introverted. So the fact that I'm out here doing these videos, it's just like a testament to how comfortable I feel. Because if I don't feel comfortable, I will not do anything. So yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that you're introverted, Adina, because
I am. If you ever see me at Dreamforce, please come up and say hello, because I'm always in a corner with a small group of people around me, and you usually would not see me unless you saw me from upstairs. There are people who are like, Nadina, is that you? And I'll look up and it's like, hey. But yeah, I'm very introverted. There's just a lot of energy.
Funny. I think that speaks to that there's not one single way, right, to chase the MVP dream, because in fact, our founder, Alfredo, told me one day, he said, you're disturbingly social and energetic. I thought, I'm not really sure how to put that on my LinkedIn profile, disturbingly social. And, but I am that person. People fascinate me, and I'm incredibly extroverted. And that's been the most difficult thing for me during the pandemic, right? Is that lack of interaction with people. And Zoom is like, it doesn't fill me back up. That's the difference in extroverts and introverts, the way they refill their energy. And introverts refill themselves by being by themselves, and extroverts refill themselves by being with other people. And so I've just about been drained dry, because Zoom doesn't do it. It's not the same. I don't know if it's pheromones or touch.
The touch, it's the feeling. It's that's the thing I tell people. I can't wait to go back to Dreamforce. Like, I know that week after I'm going to be like so overwhelmed. I'm going to have to take like a break from everything social. But it's a fact, like, I haven't been able to see people. You haven't been able to hug people. You
Right.
talk, you chat, you know, you feed off of others' energies, and everyone's just like so excited. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to. Is like when Dreamforce, or even going to some of these smaller events. I know like Florida Dreaming, like I'm hoping to go to that just to get more of that interaction.
Yep. And that's really the way I got started. And I am a joiner, right? And because there were not local events, and because of the role that I have in my company, I'm kind of, the face of the app sometimes to get out and speak and to go to events and, do some work like that. So going to the smaller events, in fact, Midwest Dreaming, I believe, was the first one that I presented at. And of course, that's Eric Dreschfield. And if you know Eric Dreschfield, he can introduce you to anyone in the entire world because he is the Kevin Bacon of Salesforce. And so that was that start, right? And I'll never forget, I told our team, I was like, I promise if you all will let me go to Salesforce, if we can afford to do this as a startup, then I will meet all 170,000 people and Mark Benioff and I will be drinking buddies before I come home. And so I did. Obviously, I didn't meet all 170,000 people, and I thought my feet were going to fall off, but I met so many people and then kept up with them. I mean, mostly on Twitter, more than even the Trailblazer community, and then interacted with them, right? So, and I wound up, that was in, I think, Dreamforce was in October that year, and I did not get to meet Benioff, but I did actually get the opportunity to meet him in December that year in Atlanta at the World Tour. And when they called and they wanted me and a customer to come, and I said, sure, I'll be glad to, but I want to meet Benioff. And so I got to. So my promise was a little bit delayed, but from there it mounted, right? And so that was kind of, I would submit a session to every Dreaming event that existed. And I went to them. I mean, if they accepted my session, then I figured out a way to be there. And so I've presented all over the world. I went to Amsterdam for Your Dream and took my family with me that time. So, half of the Salesforce crew knows my family. When I presented at Texas Dreaming, I don't know if you were there, Nadine. I mean, you were probably quiet and I didn't notice you, right?
I think I remember when you came that year. I probably was working the front very quietly. Yes.
But I brought my family on that trip. That was when Eric Dershfield and I were talking about, you might be an admin if you plan your family vacation around Dreaming events, right? So, and it just escalated from there because I do keep up with people. People are fascinating and I collect them, love it. So it just grew from attending all those different events and literally knowing people in all those different places. I was so disappointed that Kiwi Dreaming, got canceled. I was on tap to do that, to go to New Zealand. I've never been. And Anna and I, formed a great relationship, working on the logistics of doing that. So I think that's really the big thing is, getting to know the people.
Yeah, and putting yourself out there. Because for me, when I first started, it was really hard for me to be like, hello, I'm Nadina, new to Salesforce. I would love to be your friend and learn everything that you know, right? But literally, that's what you have to do. You have to let people know how they can help you, because sometimes people only have 30 seconds to a minute, and you don't know when you meet them that one time when your paths will cross again over and over, right? So sometimes that first impression of just putting yourself out there and just saying hello, especially like for me, I was telling this to Johan earlier, as I'm doing my CTA journey now and I filled out that form. One of the things they were like, do you have a mentor? And I was like panicking last year because I didn't have a mentor. So I put it out on the Trailblazer community. I'm like, I have this case number. I need a mentor. This is how I need help. I put it all out in a message, and Lawrence Newcomb messaged me, and I was like, oh my God, somebody actually messaged me, like, I will make whatever time this person needs. Because before I didn't know Lawrence, and he was in the UK, and he's like, is timing an issue? It's like, timing will never be an issue with me, right? Because that is my dedication to making sure that I can meet with you because you're giving me your time.
This sounds like you invest a lot from a time perspective. How does this feel for you? Is it work? Is it private? Is it?
For me, time is a very important resource. I don't, anything else you can get more of. You can get more money, you can always get a new job, but you only have so much time. And so it's not work. I treat it as a very valuable resource. And so I always make sure that if I don't have time for someone, I will let them know I don't have time for you today, but I will make time for you on X day. And it's something where it doesn't feel like work. So volunteering, giving back, it's never felt like work for me, because if it's work, I'm not going to do it. Even at my job, I love to solve complicated problems. And if I don't feel like those problems are complicated, like at that point, I will start looking for a new job because I need to be challenged. And so from a timing perspective, it's something I give freely, but I also know you can't pour from an empty cup. So I try to make sure that when I volunteer that I do have the time and the commitment to put in to give my 100%. Then if I can't do it, then I just will say no, and I know there's another opportunity.
And you've been a volunteer coach for Rad Women Code, right, Adina?
Yes,
You've done that.
I do it twice a year, every year, and I love it. 10 weeks, I get to meet these amazing administrators becoming developers, and then we have it again in the fall. And there's so many other things you can do for Rad, not just coach, but it's one of the things I love because it keeps me sharp on the basics.
Well, and there are, so that's another, I think, opportunity to put yourself out there, Johan, is to volunteer, right? Because there are so many groups that need volunteers, and you don't have to be the expert to be able to do that. The very first group, so Blanca Leon Carter, who was studying for her Platform Developer 1 at the same time that I was. And she offered through Ladies Be Architects, and that's Gemma's group that she and Susanna and Charlie started. And she offered volunteer to lead that group and said, if I'm leading the group, I don't have to know everything. I just have to help everybody learn. And that was phenomenal, such a great opportunity. And I have volunteered a couple of times with Pep Up Tech. I have taught the class on nonprofit cloud consulting, not because I know everything. I mean, I've got that certification, but because I think that's such an important and critical part of the work that I do. I was excited to get to meet the young people who are interested in pursuing that particular vertical, in the Salesforce ecosystem. And so wound up in a lot of not formal mentoring situations, but very informal, because I was teaching that group, people felt like they could come to me, which I'm so glad, because I love being able to communicate with them that way. That's how I met Doug Contawi and Sandra Prieto, who, went on to become part of the organizing committee for Nonprofit Dreamin', and watching their careers grow and change and explode. That to me is one of those, it's always an investment. When I invest my time, it all comes back. That encourages me, it uplifts me, and gives me the energy to try and do it again.
So you always get something back in a way?
I do. I mean, you do. It's not intentional. I mean, that's not the reason I do it, but I always feel like that I get back so much more than I ever give.
Yes, I feel the same way, that it's not how you start out. Like, that's not ever the intention, but like even for Rad, I now know, like, I have all these new developers to follow, and you never know, one day you may have like an opening at your job, or somebody may say, Nadina, do you know a developer? And I can say, yes, I do. I do know a developer. Here is a person that I know and I can connect you with.
I can agree there. I mean, people who know me, I take literally everybody on LinkedIn up for who wants to contact me for a 30-minute chat, because you never know, not from some absolute beginner gives you a really stupid question. You're like, I actually don't know that. Or you learn how to explain it. You always get something out of it. And this is just my feeling. And I learned that also from Jitendra. He told me, write your notes public, make them public on a blog. People will come back to you, and I want to lead over to that. What's the dark side? I mean, you put yourself out there. What about critics? How to handle, you don't do everything perfect. You make mistakes.
Yeah, I would say sometimes, they're coming from a good place, but you might not be in a good place. So you might not be open to feedback. And so I know for me, I'm not perfect. And when I was much younger, I was very much a people pleaser. So if somebody would tell me something, I would be devastated. Like, I put all this time in it and I can never do this again. Like, it's not perfect, but things will never be perfect. And so now that I'm older, I know that everything's always coming from a place of they want you to do better. They want you to make it the best. And so I know that no matter what somebody tells me, somebody could tell me today, Nadina, that post that you put out was the dumbest thing I ever read. And I will just be like, thank you. How can I make it better? Because I always make sure that the feedback is not one-sided. Because if it's one-sided, it's not going to help you. But don't bring a problem if you don't have a solution, right? So you always try to entice and get, what would you do if you were writing it? What would you put into it? How can I get this better? For me, my spelling is not always the best. So I always have someone help me check that, right? Because my written English, I would say, is not as good as my spoken English. I can speak very eloquently, but when it comes to writing, I just have issues sometimes, and that's okay because I know that's something I'm always working on, but I always have somebody help me check. And so if I make a mistake spelling or someone corrects me, I'm like, thank you, because now I know, like, maybe I didn't use this properly. Maybe the subject verb agreement wasn't the best, and that is okay. But overall, you just want to make sure that you don't take things to heart. You don't, if it makes you a little sad, it's okay, but it's always coming out of a place of love, and it's usually where they're just trying to help you do best. And sometimes people are not the best communicators. So
Right.
when they might think they're giving it to you straightforward, right? Like I have some friends that are blunt, I will say, where they will just tell you the time of day, and I love it because I'm like, today I need blunt feedback. I don't need the Nadina, this was good and you're doing a great job and everything is fine. I don't need that today. I need a blunt, honest feedback. So I will call certain people and say, is this a good idea? What do you think? And they're like, Nadina, this is a bad idea. Tell me, why is it bad? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I will consider this, right? So
I think you're right, Adina, that everybody wants you to succeed. That was like such a new concept for me because I've been in so many communities where that was not the case. And especially as a woman in technology, there's always that idea of there can only be one woman at the top. And so it's so competitive and I've not found that to be as true in the Salesforce community. It really is. I mean, you may be criticized, but it truly is to help you be better, and not just because they're being spiteful or, bitchy, for lack of a better word.
right.
But they really are trying to help you improve. And that was a huge revelation. So I guess if I'm known for anything personally from my personal branding standpoint, it is being an encourager, right? Any woman that follows me on Twitter, I will follow back immediately. Any woman that posts their certification or their accomplishment or whatever is important to them, I will retweet and praise. And because we've all got enough critics, right?
Right.
But but being able to reiterate and amplify, which I'm also on the board of directors for Amplify. That was
Melissa, you're doing everything.
well, I know I start listing the things and I'm thinking, oh my God, when do I sleep? But sometimes I don't. But amplifying, especially women's voices, because I think a lot of it we do to ourselves. It's not that we're always so downtrodden. We trod ourselves down sometimes. And so to be able to say, you're fantastic, you're brilliant, keep up the good work. That to me, and that encourages me to see that there are still young women and older women and all the women in between that are working to do better things.
Yeah, I think that's like a big point too for, you know, that belief in yourself as well. I always tell people I believe in you. I will say that like 100 times because I really do. I really believe that you will succeed. But sometimes people need that belief in themselves to be like, yes, I can do this. Of course you can do it. There's no doubt that you can do it. And I don't know, Melissa, I'm sure you've seen me on Twitter. I'm like one of the biggest hype people out there when it comes to people getting certifications or people like, I will stop what I'm doing sometimes. And I know this is recording, but sometimes I'll stop my work to be like, oh my God, this person just got this. I need to go and hype this up right now.
So maybe I can summarize. I took away two things now. Both of you actually are not alone. You have a support network around you. Maybe that's not too visible to the outside, but there's people who help you with everything from validating your ideas to spell checking and in between.
Mm-hmm.
And for people starting out, I would say I take something away. I can start slow and easy by supporting others, either positively or negative or critically, but both is valuable as long as it comes from a good place. Is this something you would take away for others?
Yep.
Yes, I would say, go ahead, Melissa.
I was just going to say, I think that's true. And I think also letting others support you, right? So some of the most amazing people that I have met are because I didn't know how to do something. I put a question out on Twitter one day, and Amnon Groovy reached out to me and was like, if you've got some time, let's get on a call together and we'll work through this. And so to be vulnerable and to say, I don't know how to do this, and to accept someone's help. And he was brilliant. And of course, a great teacher, and helped me figure out exactly what I needed to do. And so because I had allowed him to help me, he's kind of part of my village, I guess you could say now. So not to feel like starting out that you have to know it all, or that it's a sign of weakness not to know, and to say, I don't know how to do this. I mean, Nadina and I are both, MVPs now, and I guarantee you there are things that she and I don't know how to do. Correct. I know there's for me. Probably
there's tons for me. There's so much in this ecosystem to remember. Like I ask for help almost every day. Like, how do you do this again? What is this? I remember I asked someone like, is this feature available? And someone just sent me the link, and yes, it's coming in summer. And I was like, thank you, because I haven't been able to get through the summer release yet.
Did you know that we can now translate Lightning page tabs? Because I was very convinced this is not possible. And then one of my customers actually told me, yeah, it's possible. And I felt a little bit stupid.
Yeah, there's so many little things and these little intricacies. Like you can't keep up with everything going on in Salesforce. And Melissa, like you're right, like there's so many villages that help raise me up. And then, I also help give back to a lot of people as well, because it's just asking for help, but also knowing like, yes, you have to put yourself out there, and there's no dumb question. I know some questions may seem dumb, but there's no dumb question. And when you're asking it, you're generally asking like, I had no idea this is even a thing. And especially anytime someone is like, well, in Classic, I'm like, ooh, Classic has been so long because I've been in Lightning for so long now. I'm like, anytime someone's like in Classic, I'm like, I really don't know. I have to double check this. I cannot tell you.
Many of us, I can only speak for myself. I come from let's say a male-dominated tech background in Berlin, come from a place where you don't be weak. How should guys like me start to practice this? Where should we go?
Well, so one thing that you did yesterday or day before yesterday, Johan, that really impressed me, because you went back and read the little blog post that I had done on 3 fast, easy ways, free, easy ways to impact your nonprofit. And so to be able to retweet that and say, oh, Melissa, you've convinced me I need to do something on, what was it, next best action, or, the Einstein predictor, right? Yeah. And so to me, that was a brilliant thing to do, right? Because now that's a new thing that you're going to look at, and we know you're looking at that. And, of course, I'm like, oh, I thought, well, I need to holler at Johan and say, hey, if you want to work through this together, I'd love to see what you're thinking. And that conversation back and forth on Twitter, I never got Twitter until about, I don't know, 4 years ago, and realized that you could actually have those conversations, right? So now I'm interested, so what are you thinking that you would build, in the prediction builder, right? What are you thinking you'll build? Because maybe it's something I haven't considered. And then I'm going to learn from you. That's always my takeaway, right? Anytime I help anybody, I wind up learning something from them as well. So I think that's a good one.
I didn't get Twitter until a half a year ago, maybe because we Europeans, and also I know the Indians, many of us, we are poorly on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is very professional, which is, I like. We're very on our best behavior there, which is amazing. So would you say people to go on Twitter, where it's a little bit more, let's say, informal?
Yeah, I would say if you're not on Twitter, like I know a lot of people, I've heard this all the time, they're so hesitant to join because I think Twitter is what you make it, just like LinkedIn is what you make it. Like, I know you said LinkedIn is professional, but I've seen the other sides of LinkedIn, and some parts are just not professional. I think Twitter is the same way. You connect with, the Ohana, and you connect with all these Salesforce professionals, and you really make it about what you want. There's a lot of other things that happen on LinkedIn, and I try to just filter that noise out because I have no time for that in my life right now. But yeah, if you're not on LinkedIn and connecting, it's so easy to have a conversation, especially if you're introverted. Because like for me, I already feel like I've met you once, I've tweeted and followed you. So it's like the ice breaking of that informal of like, hello, my name is Nadina, is like, so you've done it by just following someone.
And Twitter is more conversational, don't you think, Nadina, than LinkedIn is?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn tries to do it with discussions, but it's so easy, especially like now that Twitter has things like spaces where you can spin up a voice channel if you want, but it's so easy to literally send out a poll and say, what do you think? Should I have Pi Day for Pi Day? Like things like that. And you can have serious conversations where you can ask Salesforce, with hashtag #AskForce, or you can tweet at Salesforce where if you think of the old school method, sending an email into the void, you don't know if they'll respond. But people respond on Twitter.
Well, and that's the funny thing. So you do ask Salesforce on Twitter, but 9 times out of 10, somebody like Amnon or Nadina or somebody will jump in and give me the answer on Twitter before Ask Salesforce ever has an opportunity to respond. So I think you're right. It's what you make it. I post everything on Twitter. Whether it's Salesforce, that's how we got started with Food Force. Yesterday I got a love seat in a box, which I had never seen that before. It was interesting to me. It may not be interesting to you, and that's fine. Don't tweet that.
Yeah, people will follow anything. Like I post about my dogs, I post about gardening, I post about crochet, I post everything on Twitter, everything.
I don't
know.
But
that way you kind of find out the people that are interested in those things, right?
Yes.
And so you make those connections and those little affinity groups pop up like that.
And I have the feeling that the Twitter algorithm is really good. So I never saw any of Nadina's dogs, because I'm not into dogs. I put it out there.
Makes sense, yeah.
So Twitter, I think, kind of is smart enough to understand. So do you have a professional Twitter account or a professional persona? Can I ask that? Because you're a person of public interest, let's call it this way.
Yeah, I'll go back to what my grandmother always told me when I was younger. Don't put anything out on Facebook, Twitter, or the internet that you can't tell me. So I have one Twitter, that's Nadina_Coates. That's my Twitter. It is me as a person. So LinkedIn, I would say, is more of my professional side. I don't post my animals on there, but Twitter is the full rounded, authentic me. It's basically what is on my Facebook, because anything I post, I genuinely want people to know. And then anything that I really don't want you to know, I will never post. You will never find out about it.
I agree. I think that's true. So LinkedIn is more where I put professional accomplishments. That's where I list the things like being on the board of Amplify and the national board of Tool Bank USA and, my certifications and those sorts of things. But Twitter is more almost a stream of consciousness with me. So that I can share whatever I'm thinking at any given moment in time. And I'm a very transparent person. You never have to wonder where you stand with me. If I'm mad at you, you'll know it. If I'm happy with you, you'll know it. So yeah, my Twitter account is, it's Melissa Hill Dees, and it's it's me. But my life is so consumed with almost all things Salesforce that a lot of it becomes Salesforce. But there are funny things like, I have a dog too, and we know the dog people, right? And we took my daughter to tour the university where she's going to be attending this fall. And, there were a couple of pictures that I posted, of her being there. And people know I have a daughter and a husband. And that's what's interesting. Sometimes those are the things you don't find out. But if you don't tell me that, I just assume you're more private, and that's okay. I don't have to know that you have a spouse or a child or a pet, So, but I love the conversational quality of, and you're right, Nadine. I think getting to know people on Twitter. I have a couple of really good friends now that I've made through Twitter that I had no idea they were introverts, and because it's not as intimidating, I guess, to have those conversations on Twitter.
Yes, for me, it's that first conversation, because if you think about real world interaction, you have to go up to the person, you have to say hello, and then you have to keep the conversation going, right? So you want to listen, and then you're trying to think, okay, I think I should say something. No, but on Twitter, you have 127 characters. I can send an emoji, and I've like sent a whole conversation. So it's like the first conversations happened. Oh, we're following each other now. I just assume we're friends. So if I see you in person, I'm just getting to say hello to you. And I've done that before where it's like I've accidentally I saw someone and I thought it was somebody else. I gave him this big wave, and it's like, oh, I don't know who you are, but no, we have to have a conversation because you look like one of my friends. But it was so comfortable, and it was so easy to just get into, and you don't feel the stress of having to carry the conversation, because a tweet can go on for weeks. I mean, I was in one where we were talking about, name these 3 people and tag someone, and it just keeps going on, and every now and again I get looped back in, and you jump in, you jump out. It just keeps going on. So,
and if you're smart, Nadine, and this is what I try to, in an in-person setting, right, find those people that I know are introverts, right, that I have made a connection with, and kind of drag them along with me, because then they don't have to start the conversations. I'll start the conversation. I'll introduce them to someone that they might not introduce themselves to, right? And get a lot of joy from doing that, being able to connect people and help them get beyond that introvertedness, to be able to get to know someone. Because most introverts I know, once they get over the hump of meeting
yes,
someone, then they'll talk to you forever.
I always have 2 or 3 extroverts with me. That's why I always tell you at Dreamforce, I'm in a little group. It's with my extrovert friends, because they will always bring me in a conversation. People like Scott Lucard, like any conversation I'm in with him, he's always like, Nadina, she will lurk if you don't invite her in. And it's true, because I will sit, analyze an entire conversation and say nothing. But it's not that I don't want to participate. It's more so I didn't see where I could jump in. So I'm like, it's like when you're in elementary and you're playing jump rope, you're waiting to jump in, but there's not a good moment yet. So,
right.
Yeah.
So you would say you can start easy, let's call it this way, on Twitter. You make Twitter your Twitter. I would say personally, start following Nadina and Melissa. Just this is a good place. We talked about it a little bit beforehand, Nadina. People would just assume that you are who you are, but you put in a lot of work also. We talked about it. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? And Melissa, maybe it's the same for you. Maybe you are the natural one.
Yeah, so I think for me, people have always told me I'm very well spoken, I'm intelligent, I can carry a conversation, you're so extroverted. I work at all these things. So when I first came to the US, my accent was very, very heavy. So I have, I would say, a more professional spoken voice where I will take my time, I will enunciate words. Yes, enunciate. I had an issue with that when I was younger as well, being able to pronounce words. And it's something where people are like, oh, your flow is so good. And it's like, I practice this every day. Every day as I'm having a conversation, even as I'm having this conversation now, I will take time. If I have a pause, I try not to say, because I'm actually you just pause, right? It's something when I did Toastmasters when I was in college that they told you, when you need to pause, you just stop and then you speak again. So I practice that every day. And it's something that you just have to work at. It's something my parents have always told me, that to be good at something, you work at it, and it's how much you want to put into it. It's your passion. It's something that will drive you. But the minute you stop working at it, you're not going to be good at it, because it's some things may come natural for some people, but there's always some level of work you have to do to refine it and to polish it.
I think you're right, Nadina. For me, speaking comes naturally. I could talk the ears off of, anything. And I've never had a fear of public speaking. I'm happy to get up in front of, whether the crowd is 20 people or, if I were on the main stage at Dreamforce and it was all 170,000, wouldn't make a bit of difference to me.
No, I would just fold over and die probably. I get super nervous and I have to shake my hands at least once before I give a speech. It's really weird. So yeah, I shake the stress out once. I don't know if people ever see me do it, but I always do that and then I feel better.
But the thing that I found with most people is they don't say yes, right? They have opportunities to do things and they don't say yes. And so for me, I try to say yes more than I say no. And that is what gets me out there, right? And some things I have even asked. So I got to be friends with Stacy Cogswell. And I asked her and Justice Sikakani, I said, how do people get chosen for the campfire stories, that podcast? And she was like, well, I don't know. We usually just ask somebody. I said, because I'd really like to do that. And they were like, so come do that. And a lot of times people are looking for people to present, to participate, to do something, and they just don't know who's available, or they're shy about asking someone. So it really is saying yes, submitting. I submit for all sorts of things. And I figure if I get accepted, I'll figure out what the presentation is going to be.
This is something I learned from Nina. In the past, I had the presentation ready and submitted it, and then I was very devastated when it wasn't chosen. Nina just told me, submit the headline, everything else follows anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, that is what I do as well. I will, half the time I have like an idea that can become a presentation. I remember the first time I presented for Dreamforce. So the first process, like I would say 2 presentations almost ready, and I submitted 5, my husband and I, and like we weren't chosen. There was another opportunity and I was like, I had this really wild idea that I'm going to literally pull from the sky, and it was like an experience page time because it was a quick 20-minute session. So I was like, there's just enough time for intros and a demo. So I submitted just, this is what I want to do. This is the abstract. Had nothing built. I had no idea what the demo was going to look like. And then I got chosen. So it's like, oh, okay. Now I have to go build this 10-minute demo and walk through these personas. But that was one thing that it taught me, that, again, not everything has to be ready. And like you said, Melissa, you just have to put yourself out there, which I do as comfortably as I feel like doing. I will say I've had a lot of people who will, Nadina, you'd be great for this. You should do this. And I'm like, sure, because yeah, you know me. So I think as my extroverted friend, you know what's best for me in this case. So I will give it one try. I'm always I will try it once. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. So that's, I would say that's like another thing to be willing to try at least once.
Yeah.
Melissa, when I can follow up there, hopefully not too personal, what's the one thing you have to practice constantly? It's not public speaking.
Not public speaking, no. Probably my time management is not as good as it should be, because I always overbook myself, and then when something falls apart, so I'm late for a meeting right now. And because we started late because I got called into something else, and so time management is a struggle, and prioritizing. So I have to practice that. That's, we talked yesterday about work-life balance that doesn't exist. And I use that work-life integration, which works, and I get a lot accomplished, but sometimes it gets a little bit stressful because my time management, I have a hard time stopping if I'm really enjoying something or really need to get something done, to be able to go on to the next task. So that's something I have to practice a lot.
And I don't want to take away too much time from your next meeting, and maybe we even have a couple of minutes break in between for getting a cup of tea or coffee, whatever fancies you. What is the one thing you can give people who say, I want to be an MVP in 5 to 10 years? We have big goals. What's the one thing people can take away from the two of you? You reached it all now. I mean, Nadina, you are soon CTA. You reached the absolute pinnacle of sales with Melissa. You're the co-founder of a company. What's the one thing what I can do to become like you?
For me, I think it's persistence, right? So just hanging in there and continuing, like, so you submit and you don't get accepted to present. Submit again, submit again. I didn't get accepted the first time. I didn't get accepted to speak at Dreamforce the first time I submitted. It was, I don't know, a couple of years in before I actually got to present at Dreamforce. So just that persistence. If it's something, if you really want to give back to the community and you really want to help and you continue to do that, regardless of whether you get nominated or picked to be an MVP, if you keep on, eventually it will pay off if that's really what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I would say to add on to that, put yourself out there. If you're introverted, know that you have very good friends in your corner. So start forming that village and helping other people as well. And volunteering shouldn't be work. It should be something you're passionate about. Even like your work should be something you're passionate about. And it will just shine through. Like someone always describes me as an infectious mood, and I tell people I make people feel comfortable. Like that is my secret superpower, because when I'm in the room and like I know you, I have so much to say and I'm all of this energy, and you just can't help but get my energy. Because if today is a good day for me, I don't care if you're having a bad day. I will flip that around because we're going to have a good day today. Like Tuesdays are the best days of the week. And I will make sure people know that if they ever ask.
It's Thursdays. Everybody knows that.
Tuesdays are for me. I don't like Mondays, but Tuesdays are my best days.
We can agree on Mondays. We disagree on Tuesdays there. Because
And that is okay.
It's the second Monday. It's still bad.
So we'll call it a second Monday. But yeah, I would say, put yourself out there, and then also just believe in yourself. Believe that you can do the thing. Believe that even if it seems stressful, like going to speak on a stage with 20 people, 50 people, or 100 people, and you might be nervous, you might psych yourself out, or like me, I'm going for a CTA and I know I will get CTA. It will take time and a lot of dedication, but I know I will get it. I will not have myself be a blocker. If anything else is a blocker, that is okay. But it's one of those things where it's, persistence, believing in yourself that you can do the thing, making your mind up, having the right mindset, I would say. And then also knowing that whatever good works you do in the ecosystem, it will be spotlighted. You might feel like no one's watching you, but everyone will eventually see you.
Mm-hmm.
There's one last thing I would like to highlight from my point of view. I know a lot of people who actually work in the backgrounds. You know what I mean? People who support.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the one the two of you, each of you would like to call out today, who is in the background, doesn't get the spotlight maybe?
So, and this may not be the answer that you want to hear, Johan, but for me, it's my husband. Because I went back to university 5 years ago and have been studying ever since, completed my bachelor's degree finally. I'm working an MBA now. I have an 18-year-old daughter. When I went back to school and was working full time, with this startup, my husband is the one who picked up all those things that I just didn't have time to do anymore. I mean, the cooking, the laundry, vacuuming. So I tell people, if he didn't do the things that he does, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. So I have the time to be, to serve on these boards and to study and to, be in a conversation like this because he takes the time to do these other things that would take up my time. So he's genuinely my support system.
Yeah, I would say the same for me as well. My husband is in the ecosystem. He doesn't very knowledgeable, but he doesn't like to put himself out there because he wants me to put myself out there. And so he always steps back a little bit so that I can be seen, which is something, if you know me, you would know him. Like Justin is all over and he's super knowledgeable, very great developer. I always joke that I learned everything I know from him. And if you think that I am coming across a little rough, like you should talk to him because he is no nonsense, serious. This is what we're doing. And he's just been so instrumental, even for like my CTA journey, when I'm doing all my exams or when I'm meeting at lunch for my study group. He will bring me lunch. He will just make sure that anything that I need to support me doing any of these things, like I hate driving, he will drive me wherever I want to go, which is, you know, he has his own job, his own life, but it's more so to support me because he knows these are the things I like and he will be along that journey with me.
This is so nice of you. This is so. I think with that, we can wrap it up for today. I think, Melissa, you have a meeting to go. I have the Toronto admin user group to attend to. Thanks a lot for the both of you. I took away a lot. I learned my lesson today, not only one, many. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Johan.
much.
Okay, bye.
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 And